The sun. It provides warmth and energy for all living things. The sun keeps plants and trees alive. Plants and trees give us the energy or the oxygen we need to survive. So we use it every day. The sun also gives us a vitamin, which is vitamin D, which is also found in milk, which is necessary for healthy bones. So with all this stuff that we're using the sun for, are we truly using it to its fullest potential? Hi, I'm Matt Staley, a member of the Charter Oak Boosters 4-H Club. Lately, I've become really interested in alternative sources of electricity. And when I saw this year's 4-H theme, I took Brighten Your World to heart and decided to make my presentation about solar panels. I believe since I said before, every living thing uses solar panels. I think that we can, there's a bunch of different ways that they use solar panels, from passive solar heating, active solar heating, and focusing a bunch of mirrors on boilers to create steam and run electric turbines. I believe with the technology we have today through solar panels, we can truly just take that energy from the sun and turn it directly into electricity free of charge. My goals for this presentation are to talk about how solar panels work, explain the pros and cons of solar panels, and talk about the different applications that the world has for solar panels. See, solar panels are just big photovoltaic cells. Photovoltaic cells are also known as PV cells, which is way easier to say. Photo means light, and voltaic means it has something to do with electricity. These cells are made up of 5 layers. The top layer is a layer of glass. It protects the rest of the solar cell beneath it from being weathered, from dirt, sand, anything that might be in the air, snow, rain, and it just keeps it safe. The second and last layer are the front-back contacts. They work like the positive and negative end of a battery. And like we all know, every battery has a positive and negative end. The next 2 layers are where really all the magic happens. The top layer is a layer of silicon that's been mixed with phosphorus. This mixture, for whatever reason, creates a negative charge. The layer beneath it is a layer of silicon, but it's been mixed with boron. This mixture gives off a positive charge. Well, as we all know, positives and negatives stick together. Well, when these 2 sheets are put together, their electrons, the negative and the positive ones, sort of form a mesh. When these electrons, when they mesh together, they get really comfortable. And they'll sit there until something forces them to move, which is exactly what the sunlight does. When sunlight enters through the top of the photovoltaic cell, then it goes through the glass and into this mesh of positive and negative electrons. When the sunlight or photons enter into it, when a cup's already full and it overflows, that's kind of like what this is. The photon comes in and just gets in the way of everything. It starts making everything kind of jitter around and move. Then energy is created then, and the energy is allowed to exit through this back contact, out through a wire, and you have electricity. Now, the difference between regular electricity from your power supplier and the electricity you get from a solar panel is the electricity you get from your power supplier is an alternating current, which is stronger over long distances and just more powerful all around. From a solar panel, you get a direct current of electricity, which is really strong at first, but it doesn't last very far over longer distances. Very small solar panels have been providing direct current electricity for households for years, from calculators, just the little calculators with the tiny little solar panel on them, to solar landscape lights, to even traffic warning lights that you might see on the highways now. Larger solar panels, or groups of solar panels, can also be used to provide electricity for homes and businesses. Now, how can we take this direct current that comes out of the solar cell and turn it into the alternating current that we use in our houses? Because it needs to be the same, because all the houses are already set up for an alternating current of electricity. They use a piece of equipment called an inverter. An inverter takes that high voltage direct current electricity coming straight out of the solar cell and turns it into a lower voltage, more usable alternating current that your house can use, that it could power something as simple as a lamp or as something as complex as an entire house. And one really cool fact is about this, that other than just saving money altogether from getting free electricity, is that if you create too much electricity, or you're just not using all of it, then it goes backwards through your electricity meter, and it'll turn it backwards, and that saves you money off of your electricity bill. Now, I want to take a minute to explain to you guys the pros and cons of solar panels. I feel like once you know the good and bad of something, then you can really understand why it works the way it does. One of the pros is it's clean. Solar panels, once they're created, they don't give off pollution, they're not burning anything, there's no gears turning in them or anything, smoke coming out of them. They just sit there. So there's no pollution that comes out of them. Another pro is that they're quiet. Once they're on top of your house or on top of a business or on a solar farm, you're not going to hear, like I said, burning, gears grinding or anything like that. It just sits there. They may utilize unused space. So, say where we live, we don't have a whole lot of place to put them. But what about on your roof? Are you really using your roof for anything other than just some shingles, maybe an antenna? Well, you can just put solar panels on top of your roof, and they're not taking up any space you were going to use beforehand. Another pro about them is sunlight is abundant and free. When you think of a gas motor, you think the fuel for that is gasoline. Or a coal-burning power plant, the fuel for that's coal. Well, we're going to run out of those someday. Sunlight, if we run out of that, we're not going to live anyways. So, the sunlight that we get for it, it's free forever. Now, the biggest con about solar panels is that they are pretty expensive. One highly efficient solar cell for an average house will cost roughly $1,000. And it takes about 15 to 20 to cover a house to actually fully power one. So that's looking at $15,000 to $20,000. And that's not even including the price of getting them installed. So that's about half of that price added back on. So they're pretty expensive. Another con is that they only function during daylight hours. So that means half the time this thing's on your roof or in your yard, it's just sitting there, it's not really doing anything. Another con is that it requires direct sunlight. This could be it requiring direct sunlight could be a big con for bigger industries, say in New York City where there might be a lot of smog. They're not going to run as efficiently as maybe right here where we have direct sunlight all the time, except for when it's a little cloudy. So then a bigger company might not want to try using solar panels to run their industry. And solar farms cover a lot of land. There's one solar farm down in California in the Mojave Desert that covers 36,000 acres, I think, or 3,600 acres, which is, yes, 3,600 acres. And we all know that, especially in Iowa, how much we use land. We know that's a lot of land. Now, some people might say, why should I use solar panels? I can just take my electricity from the grid like everyone else and no harm. Well, I'm no nature activist or anything like that, but we all know that the coal, oil, natural gas that we use every day isn't going to last forever. And these solar panels, they only last about 25 years, which is pretty good, but the sheets, those positive and negative sheets, they're made of silicon. Silicon is found in sand. Sand is really abundant on Earth. We know there's sand pretty much everywhere. Sand is made out of oxygen and silicon. So if we just take the oxygen out of sand, we have what these solar panels are mostly made out of. And the protective glass layer, glass is made out of heated up sand. So these things are mostly made out of sand. So that's really reusable, and that's a really good thing about it. And if, say, your solar panel breaks or if it's faulty, then they can actually recycle those silicon layers off of them and reuse them later. Solar panels are a really green source of electricity, but they're not a very cheap one. It would make more sense for an entire city to have their own solar powered arm and just hook up the whole city to the grid than each household in a town to hook themselves up on their own personal grid. And when I was researching solar energy in this city called Gandhinagar, India, they're doing exactly that. Except they have a solar rooftop program, their government does, which is they take all their government buildings and put solar panels on tops of their rooftops. And it's been really successful so far. They even have a energy negative building, and I've seen the building, it's really big, and they create so much electricity that they can't use it all, and it does go back into the grid and they actually are making money off this building, which I think is obviously successful. And in this city, there's hooked up to the city, there's a big solar farm that is scheduled to be quadrupled in size because of success so far. And that's what they're actually powering the city with, is a big solar farm. Now, this is all great places where, say, there's a bunch of land not being used, like in the desert, like I said, down in the Mojave Desert. No one's using that dirt, that sand for anything already. So it's no problem for anyone. But what about, say, rural Iowa? What are we going to do with solar panels? We don't have any room to put them. Well, scientists have started looking into transportation for the answer. They're looking into maybe putting solar panels in the sides of highways on the road ditches. Some ideas are even so wild to think of replacing the highways themselves with solar panels, but I don't see that happening anytime soon from what I read. Now, I'm sure there will be many more innovative and revolutionary ideas to come along in the future, but let's review what I've talked to you guys all about today. I talked to you guys about how solar panels work. Solar panels are made up of 5 layers. The top layer is a layer of glass that protects the solar panel from weathering and water and anything that might ruin its insides. The second and last layer are the front and back contacts. They work like the positive and negative end of a battery. The next 2 layers are 2 layers of silicon, and they're a positive and a negative layer. And when they mesh together, then that's really where all the magic happens. So when the sunlight hits them, the electricity can exit through the back contact as a direct current. It goes through an inverter, which turns it into alternating current, and then you can use that for your house. And that's how the solar panel worked. I talked about the pros and cons of solar panels, and they last about 25 years and they're pretty recyclable, but the biggest con, they're pretty expensive as well. I also talked about the different applications for solar energy, such as calculators, landscape lights, other household uses for them, or big industries and government uses for them. Governments are beginning to look into solar panels and solar power, and so far results have been really promising. I hope you've all enjoyed my presentation and learned something you didn't already know about solar panels. My sources for this presentation include makeitsolar.com, nationalgeographic.com, cleanenergyideas.com, and the United States Department of Energy website. Are there any questions? Yes?
Do you have any idea how much of America's energy or world energy is made up of solar energy?
The question was, do I know how much the world overall, like what percentage of the electricity used in the world is provided by solar energy? And right now, I believe it's somewhere between 10 and 15%. So some of it's kind of getting up there for it, but it's pretty low now, just barely over 10, I think, I believe. Are there any more questions? Yes?
I realize that it's very resourceful. Would you say that 50% or so that lives in rural Iowa, because it's expensive, does it hurt cost effective over
the question was, I think what she's trying to say, is it going to pay itself off in rural Iowa, like where we live? Is that kind of what you meant? Alright, so is it going to be able to pay itself off? Well, right now they're working on, how, say, computers, they're making computers smaller and smaller, but they're kind of getting cheaper as well, and they're still really useful. Well, they're making solar panels like with simpler materials and making more highly efficient ones, so they actually create more electricity. They're more expensive, but so far they said about, in some places, because there's government incentives where they'll take so much of your price off, like these taxes on it, and then that will kind of, to try and give you an incentive to try and use solar power. And I believe it takes about 3 years for it to kind of start really helping you out, like money-wise, paying itself off. Yes. Are there any more questions? Are there any more questions? Then if there are no more questions, this concludes my presentation. Thank you.